Swat was silent, was clean.
So 4 decades ago, Swat was a complete different.
Completely different. Most dangerous places in the world, as has been described, especially between 2009 and 2012 and 13. No, that was a parenthesis. I don't believe in that. My experience is completely different. There is no place in the world where I felt so safe and so at home like Swat. I mean, Swat was like the dreamland. Rice was introduced in Swat coming from China. That was something which changed radically the Swat economy. That Swat was probably one of the most important, in terms of agricultural economy, most important place in South Asia in the past. Swat is probably the largest and best rice producing area in the entire subcontinent.
We have a claim that the Buddhism spread to the world from the Swat. So how do you see this?
Swat was one of the first places in western ancient India where Buddhism established itself. If you destroy the past, there will be no memories and nothing, finish. You will be like a newborn baby. The past teach you, forget the religious aspect, this is a Hindu temple, this is a Buddhist shrine. That doesn't matter. The richness of the story, the stratigraphy of the story, the wealth of these magnificent ruins which are visible everywhere, like your jewels, the jewels of your crown. I was dreaming to have all these lands preserved and protected for the future. And that dream was made, I must say, I don't want to be sentimental, but was made concrete and real by the intervention of Dr. Samad and his staff.
Hello everyone, I am Sohail Azhar Khan. Today we will be not talking in Pashto, not in Urdu, we'll be talking in English because we have a very esteemed guest in the valley of Swat. We have Dr. Luca with us, all the way from Italy. He has been here from last 40 years in Swat. What he is doing here, we will be talking to him about his life and the work he has been doing from last 40 years. Welcome Dr. Luca to our podcast and thank you so much for giving us time.
Thanks for having me today. Thank you very much.
It's very unusual that you find a person in this valley that he has been spending like 4 decades of his life. What will you be doing here? When did you come here?
I'm an archaeologist, of course.
Okay.
You have already introduced this fact. I'm an archaeologist, and archaeology means a person who is researching the past in a very special way through digging, which means excavating soil and exposing ancient structures. Archaeology is a very difficult task, is a very cooperative work. Of course, all the work that I've done here in Swat would have not be possible without the support of my colleagues, of the local workers, of the community around us, around me and around us. So, digging is my work.
Okay. So, when did you find about the richness of the heritage of Swat and when did you came here to Swat? How was Swat then and what was your first expression while first visiting Swat?
My first visit, I came to Swat the first time was in the third week of September of 1987. Just a week earlier, the Wali of Swat, the last Wali of Swat, had passed away. So I came in a moment when a transition had since long happened, since 1969, but were still the effects and the echoes of that wonderful political and social experiment that the Swat, used to say, state of Swat was. It was a completely different Swat.
Okay.
We were landing from Peshawar with a Fokker, PIA Fokker in Saidul Sharif airport.
Okay.
And through the bazaar, through the main bazaar of Mengora, in 15 minutes we were in Saidul Sharif. Just to give you an idea. Now, if you want to go from Saidul Sharif to the Kanju airport zone,
right,
it would take 1 hour in rush time, right? So
right.
This is a major change.
Okay.
Swat was silent, was clean, was the population was less than, I would say, including Buner, Shangla districts, which were later separated, split from the Swat. There were less than 1 million persons, 900,000, I guess. Now we have more than 2 millions. Just
Yes.
another difference, right? At that time, if you wanted to have to make a telephone call, you had to go to the Serene Hotel, Swat Serene Hotel, and to fix an appointment with these intercontinental calls. Now, in any moment I want to contact anywhere in the world, I can simply switch on my WhatsApp and talk. This is a great difference, of course.
Right. So 4 decades ago, Swat was a complete different. It was
Completely different. Completely
more
different.
safe, more clean.
No, I would say more safe is I don't want to enter into this cliche that
Right.
Swat is a dangerous country or Swat is a dangerous region, one of the most dangerous places in the world, as has been described, especially between 2009 and 2012
Right.
and 13. No, that was a parenthesis. I don't believe in that. My experience is completely different.
How was your experience in
My
Swat?
experience is that there is no place in the world where I felt so safe and so at home like Swat. Even more than in my home country and my hometown, which is Rome, the capital of Italy.
So how did you find the people of Swat?
Absolutely amicable, friendly, absolutely hospitable, extremely good workers, dedicated, loyal, trustworthy, I would say. It was, Swat was like, Swat, at least at the beginning, 80s, 90s, was like the dreamland.
It was a dreamland.
Was a dreamland.
And now the things are a little bit
No,
changed.
little things are changed. Of course, these non-custom paid cars, there's a lot of industries and companies that has moved here because of the no-tax area. Of course, this is a valley, a mountain valley, which can accommodate up to 1 million persons maximum. Now we have more than the double just on the main river, on the main valley of the region. So the
Yeah.
results are.
Yeah, it's a complete change, and we really appreciate we got to know about your earlier experience. Most of the time, we receive guests now from the foreign countries, so they see now Swat is a very different place. So, coming to your expertise and your work, you have done hundreds of publications, and you have documented these archaeological sites from a very long time. How many publications you have done here? What kind of achievements you achieved in the last 40 years? And I might say that did you write some books about this Swat? So tell us about your journey, that what you have achieved so far in the 40 years.
So to date, I have published 230 research articles and books, amongst which we can count almost 11 books. Majority of these books were written, all these books but one were written in English, and the great majority of my research papers were published in English. One book I'm very proud of is a small handbook for archaeological excavation, a guide to archaeology, an introduction to archaeological excavation to Pakistani students.
Okay.
The title is Digging Up. Has been there are 2 editions already published, and there is also one in 2010 was published by the Afghan Institute of Archaeology in Dari and in Pashto, and introduced to before 2021.
All right.
Was introduced as a textbook for archaeology officer at the Afghan Institute of Archaeology, published there in Kabul, in both in English, Dari and Pashto edition. So this is a book I'm particularly proud of. Another book which I like very much is a book which is based on the discovery of almost 300 documents in the Malakand fort.
Okay.
where I was housed during the period when Swat was not accessible, 2008, 2009. In that period, I was trying to come here to check the excavation, to pay our chowkidars. Was not possible. So at that time, the political agent allowed me to stay in the guest house of the Malacan fort.
Okay.
And then he gave me the permission to put in order the old archives, the old British archives, where I found 3 folders, all related to archaeology. I got the permission to publish them. Now are in the archives, in the provincial archives in Peshawar, and where they contain in original letters, autographed letter by Orestein,
Okay.
and by all the great masters who have created the archaeology of Malacan and Swat, like Harold Dean, Major Cobb, and many others, including Orestein. And that was published. All my books, most of my books were published here in Pakistan by Sangemil in Lahore
Okay.
to make them accessible to the Pakistani audience.
So how do you see? It's been like I think in 1930, Italian archaeologists first visit Swat.
No, 55.
55.
55.
So
So
it's-
next year will be 70 years of uninterrupted archaeological work.
Yeah. So it's a collaboration between Pakistan government and Italy government. It's been-
Interestingly, at the beginning, Swat, when the Italians arrived here, Giuseppe Tucci was interested to find the cradle of the Tibetan Buddhism. Swat was the cradle of Vajrayana Buddhism. This very famous Sadhu Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, was known also the second Buddha, who is revered in Tibet, in Nepal, in Bhutan as a person, like a Buddha.
Mhm.
He was born in Udiana. That was the name of this region. And
Right.
Udiana is Swat.
Right.
So the origin of the Bhutan, Nepalese, up to a certain extent Chinese and certainly Tibetan Buddhism, the so-called Vajrayana school, is Swat.
Okay.
So this is the reason why Giuseppe Tucci was spent decades in Western Tibet, in Central Tibet, exploring during the 30s. He came to know about the existence of this small valley,
Okay.
because he found the name of this valley in the Tibetan manuscripts.
Okay.
Dozens of Tibetan pilgrims from the 11th to the 16th century, even someone even in the early 20th century came to Swat because Swat for them is a kind of a holy land.
Okay.
Saying that, it's interesting to note that when Professor Tucci established here the mission and asked for a license to the Department of Archaeology in Karachi, Pakistan,
Right.
Swat was not part of Pakistan, right?
Right.
Was an independent or semi-autonomous princely state ruled by this enlightened family, the Mianguls, who did a lot of whatever is you see in Swat, the best things, I would say, because of this very happy moment of the Swat history.
The
which
Valley
was
of Swat. Valley of Swat.
the Miangul period. Okay. So the problem with this license was that the Ancient Monument Preservation Act, which was the British law inherited by the Pakistani government after the partition, was not applicable to Swat,
Okay.
right? So we have this very strange situation where you have a Pakistani government which has issued the license for the excavation for a foreign mission which is working in a princely state where this law is not applicable.
Okay.
So one of the first things which Giuseppe Tucci did after receiving the license in October 56 was to convince Ataullah Khan, the chief secretary, and then the court and the Wali to accept the Ancient Monument Preservation Act
Mhm.
be extended to the Swat.
Okay.
And that was an important a move of a paramount importance.
Okay.
The first result was that the Italian excavations were completely put under a legal framework.
Mm-hmm.
The second point was that the Pakistani law, that was the first Pakistani law which was introduced to Swat.
Mm-hmm.
And the third implication was that the Swat Museum, which was established in 1963, was the first Pakistani public building ever built in Swat was nominated by Karachi and not by the Wali. Inayat Rahman Saab was the first curator, and he was nominated by the Department of Archaeology in Karachi.
Okay.
You know, this is something, you have the combination of intelligent people on one side
Right.
and intelligent people on the other side, plus we had this wonderful guy who was F.A. Khan, the first director of the Pakistani Department of Archaeology Federal. The combination of Tucci, Wali Saab and F.A. Khan made a triangulation from which resulted all the effects that you are still seeing today.
So what you have achieved, and specifically if we talk about the archaeology and the excavations, the discoveries, we cannot summarize it in a simple words because it's a lot work had been done.
Okay.
But for the public understanding, what you have done still now,
let's start
Italian
in chronological order.
Yes.
For example,
Yes.
Neolithic time, Northern Neolithic, when there was a moment of climatic optimum, end of the third millennium. Rice was introduced here. We found evidence of this. Rice was introduced in Swat coming from China because the variety which was introduced as already domesticated rice, there were no wild rice here in Swat, was the Japonica variety, which was the one coming from China. And from China came rice and also the special blades or tools which were used for harvesting the rice. That was something which changed radically the Swat economy. Why? From Tana to Kwasakela, Burley, you have this double crop situation where you can have from the same land two crops in the same year. You have wheat and barley in May, June, and then you sow the land, put the jowar, or put the rice, and you get a second harvest, which means that Swat was probably one of the most important, in terms of agricultural economy, most important place in South Asia in the past, was the breadbasket of all the area to the south, Pushkalavati Charsada, down to Taxila, where you have only single crop agricultural system. By the way, these were savannas. At the time of the Mughals, for example, at the time of Babur, he was hunting rhinos in Charsada. But he was coming to Swat to get food. And Kushal Khan Katak say, every Khan of the Yusufzai can offer every day a 20 silver tola dinner to the guests without touching his food resources. And the British, when they arrived here in 1896, they wrote, with the experience of Bengal, with the experience of Deccan, with the experience of the Gangetic Plain, they say, Swat is probably the largest and best rice-producing area in the entire South subcontinent, just to give you an idea. So the introduction of rice changed radically the environment. Swat started becoming, along with Kashmir, which share the same
atmosphere,
environment and conditions, was probably one of the richest, most areas in this part of South Asia. Okay, number one. Second, the Iron Age period. Okay, we have this invasion from Central Asia, which is documented by DNA, by archaeological excavation, plenty of graveyards, thousands of individuals has been excavated, individual graves has been excavated. These people were coming from the present day. Bactriana means across the Amudarya, between northern Afghanistan and the Aral Sea, in that very long strip of region. And they arrived here, and they, according to linguists, according to many scholars, they might be those who introduced the Indo-Aryan languages in this region. We don't know if that is true or not. Being an archaeologist, I believe in concrete things, in concrete evidence. But you know, the genetic, the formation of this specific DNA, which was associated to these people, was mathematically reconstructed as being formed 2,000 years earlier around the Caspian, the coast of the Caspian Sea, between the Caspian and Aral.
Okay.
So these people were coming from this region. Okay, this is a so-called graveyard of Swat or Gandhara grave culture, has been excavated by the Italians, by the Pakistani, Professor Tani, and so on. 1200, 800 BC. Then we have the evidence of the Achaemenian period here,
Okay.
here in Barikot, the Mauryan evidence. Ashoka left his inscriptions in Mansehra and in Shabasgari, but we have two major Buddhist monuments here, one in Butkara and one here in Barikot,
Right.
mid 3rd century BCE, which means these are amongst the earliest archaeological evidence, physical evidence
Okay.
of the expansion of Buddhism, very far away from its region of provenance, which is between Nepal
Nepal and
India up to here. Okay, and this apsidal temple here in Barikot, which has been discovered 3 years ago, is is a discovery of a paramount importance. Butkara 1, Gulkada they call it now,
Gulkada.
is an extremely important site, was a sanctuary which was visited until the 13th, 14th century, although was in ruins. By whom? By Tibetan pilgrims who left the description of this sanctuary in their manuscripts, which were found by Professor Tucci, were in the monasteries in Tibet when in the 30s. So you see, it's like a circle. Then we have the Indo-Greek.
Yes.
Indo-Greek were Greek adventurers who came here, coming from Bactria, from northern Afghanistan, where their cities were mostly, I would say, threatened by the invasion of Sakas, Scythians, invaders. They moved towards here, and they were extremely active in constructing fortifications like the one in Barikot with this Acropolis, and they left plenty of coins, typical Greek imitation, local imitation of Greek pottery, and so on. The most famous king of this Indo-Greek period, mid-2nd century BCE, so Ashoka was mid-3rd century, so a century later the Indo-Greeks. We are putting aside Alexander. Alexander the Great came here in the end of the 4th century. But this is another story. We have evidence here. Basira, this city, was the Basira of Alexander the Great.
Who fought many battles here, right?
Many battles. One battle here, then went up to the Mount Ilam, the Mount Aornos, then Massaga. Massaga, the capital of these people living here, this confederation was Mingora. Now it's definitely proved. Mingora was the capital of the Assassanian Confederation, which was defeated by Alexander the Great. But Alexander, after, married the queen of the Assassanians, and they had a baby who was born here in Swat, whose name was Alexandros, I think. I don't remember exactly, but let's see.
No issues.
Let's keep this Alexander. But Alexander is a reality. He was here.
He was here.
Then we have this boom of the Gandharan art, architecture, spread, economic boom, which was occurred between the 1st century BC and the 2nd, 3rd century AD. Okay?
Okay.
So we're 4 centuries of an incredible expansion in any aspect. Art, architecture, Gandharan art was born in that very period. Hundreds of monasteries were founded here, and so on and so on. The reason is that there is also a climatic reason. That was the so-called Gandharan optimum, the moment when the climate was at its best. And that was a global phenomenon because that Gandharan optimum corresponds perfectly in terms of chronology to the so-called Roman optimum, which was also one of the causes of the expansion of the Roman Empire.
Okay.
Because climatic optimum means a lot of food,
right?
And those who are ruling the best producing area for food are ruling the world.
Okay.
Like today, who is ruling, who is producing oil and possessing the land where oil or rare earth or whatever, or copper, or they are ruling the world. I mean,
Right.
the economy of those who have access to the resources
Okay.
has an impact on the global history.
So this region has all the richness, according to the
Absolutely.
water, the agriculture, the atmosphere, the beauty. Then all the aspects lies here because many of the civilization, around 7 civilizations, came here in different decades, and they have fought battles to have this land. And because of the richness of this land. Later on, what about the Kushans? They are the most politically rich and economical rich era. So how do you recall it? How do you find the evidence of that era?
Okay, Kushans were not the people, not the population number one, were
Okay.
a dynasty, okay?
Okay, Kushan dynasty, right?
It was a dynasty, so were a negligible number of persons who were intelligent enough to rule the country, I mean, their own empire, from southern Uzbekistan to Mathura and to the Gangetic Plain, including Gandhara, of course, through proxies, through allies. Okay? What did they have? In which way they made this system working? Because they were the only allowed to issue coinage. So throughout the entire Kushan world, from Uzbekistan to India, from Kashmir down to Rajasthan, everybody was using Kushana coins.
Okay.
Okay? And they were using not for the market, were using mostly copper coins, which was an incredible smart invention because copper has less value than silver and gold, right?
Right.
So you can issue as many coins as you want.
Right.
Okay, like as the modern states do with the paper currencies.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
You understand the point?
Yes.
The Romans, at the same time, they couldn't issue the number of coins they needed because they were issuing coins on the basis of the treasure.
Okay.
We have a tot of gold, we can issue tot of coins of gold. You understand?
Right.
While the Kushans were much ahead. They already invented the paper currency system by using copper.
Okay.
With copper, they could issue as many coins as they wanted. There was a need for an investment, issue coins.
Okay.
Despite or regardless the treasure that you have.
So the concept of money came from Kushan's era.
Yes. Before them, the Shaka Scythians had already established that. But for example, the Indo-Greek were using silver.
Okay.
And after the Indo-Shai were using silver. And the Gupta were using gold. And the Romans at the time of the Kushans were using silver, gold, and copper. But the Kushana, apart from very few issues in gold, all the economy was run in
Copper coin.
copper coins,
Okay.
which has an incredible financial significance.
Right.
You understand
Yeah,
what I mean?
totally
If
got
you
it.
can create money as
Yeah.
you wish, regardless or despite the money that you have, the values and the goods that you have in your pockets.
So they are economically and politically very clever
Absolutely
people.
clever, economically clever, politically clever. They didn't create an administration very heavy. They were it was a light system of control of the power.
Okay.
In fact, instead of talking of a Kushan empire, I would prefer to use a Kushana system of power. Was a system.
Okay. And what about Swat? What was the significance of
In
Swat in
Swat,
the
for
Kushan?
example, the landed gentry was kicked out. The former rulers, the Odirajas, who were at the beginning of the start of the beginning of this wonder that was the Gandharan art and architecture. When the Kushanas arrived, they simply kicked out them. There is no mention of this Odiraja anymore.
Okay.
Before we have plenty of inscriptions. And they put the rule and the control of the entire country in the hand of the Buddhist monasteries. And the Buddhist monasteries were the real economic pivot They were ruling the economy, they were controlling the water, they were ruling the agriculture, because Buddhist monasteries were extremely skilled. They were able to write, able to read, able to make computing, able to go to extremely expert in agro production.
Okay.
We have agricultural manuals written at the time of the Buddhists.
Okay.
Buddhists were extremely skilled people. Okay?
Right.
So, the Kushansa were simply getting a portion of the incomes which the monasteries were ruling, were managing.
All right. And what about if we talk about the Buddhism, we have a claim that the Buddhism spread to the world from the Swat. So how do you see this?
I'm seeing that Swat was one of the first places in Western ancient India where Buddhism established itself.
Right.
Was an important place for the Buddhist tradition because many of the events which are narrated in the so-called Jatakas, which are the stories related to the previous lives of Buddha, are located in this region. Okay. So it was a sacred land. But from Swat, Buddhism spread specifically to Trans-Himalaya.
Okay. So now we are sitting on the temple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that has been discovered around 2019. It was discovered before, but later on there's a story behind. So how do you see what kind of structure it was and what kind of importance this specific place has?
This is an important place because it's one of the very few early evidence of Hindu temple that we have in Swat. There were others, of course. Zalamkot, on the Shakot Pass. In the Talash Valley, there was the temple of Gumbat, which is now completely gone. Probably there was another one in Maniar, as reported by the British.
Okay.
But this is the more majestic one. And the one of the few that which
is still have a structure.
23 meters by 14, majestic, imposing, incredible, 9 to 12 meters tall, decorated with marble sculptures, stucco decorations, and so on. How is it possible that out of the blue, the Hindus were able to construct such a magnificent building? When we do not have any single minor evidence of any Hindu worship place preserved before. That has still to do with climate changes.
Okay.
Strangely. Now, I pose a question to you. Who was ruling the economy here? The Buddhist monasteries, right?
Right.
So when you rule the economy, you produce food.
Right.
Food for people. People is happy because you have this connection with the things. You make things possible, right?
Right. Your system running.
Happy because everybody's fed, okay?
Right.
Plus 60-70% is exported, so a lot of wealth.
Right.
Which in the end is shared with everybody in the very end. Even in ancient times, everybody would have had a share. Living in a rich country means to be richer than one who lives in a poor country, right?
Right.
7th century, we have a drop of 12 degrees in summertime. That is the so-called Lalia, late ancient little ice age, which occurred throughout Eurasia, from the Mediterranean to Japan.
So that was the first recent evidence of the climate change, big climate change that happened.
Huge climate change which was caused by enormous volcanic eruptions in Indonesia, which created an enormous cloud of gas, which covered the entire Eurasia and lasted for several decades. Of course, the presence of this screen, a drop in the temperature at the ground level.
Okay.
So you mean 12 degrees in summer means that rice.
No rice.
No rice at all. So the end of the Buddhist agricultural economy.
So you are saying that this biggest climate change
Had a
event,
direct impact.
a
I'm
direct
sure.
impact on agriculture and the civilization.
Yes, otherwise,
so that
but
yes,
you should remember one point.
right.
You came here in the 16th century, guided by two Maliks. I don't remember exactly the story,
Right.
but they, instead of stopping in Mardan, they guide you up to here, like it was a visionary trip to a kind of destined land.
Right.
There is a land waiting for us. And when you arrived, that for you was like the paradise on earth.
Right.
And that's real. And that was exactly was what was.
We came to the paradise.
Yes, and you settled here.
Yes.
Other Pashtuns went to India, they moved. The Pashtuns are very, very much on the move. They go anywhere, okay? But the Yusufzai wanted to come to a specific, they decided, that they knew that there was a destination for their trip, their journey.
Okay.
And that destination find its hand here.
Right.
So, my dear Pashtun fellows, especially those belonging to the Yusufzai tribe, remember what your ancestors did and don't spoil what your forefathers have made.
Right. They led you to the paradise, and now in the coming few years, there will be no paradise. There will be
one good thing is that, frankly speaking, I'm happy that we have a very brilliant, active, and energetic director of the Directorate of Archaeology Museums, Dr. Samad.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to. We're talking about archaeology, then we diverted to other things. I forgot to say.
So, how do you see the preservations of many archaeological sites? What happened in the last 10 years, I might say? How much you have achieved so far, along with the department?
Okay. When we talk about the last 10 years, I would say we are talking about the post-devolution period. I mean, 18th Amendment, 2011, archaeology from federal became a provincial matter.
Subject.
A lot of controversies and problems at the beginning. Probably not all the provinces were ready for this move at the beginning. KP was already ready. They had already their own Antiquity Act established in 1996. I was very happy working with the federal department. I was proud to be working with several director generals. I'm absolutely nothing to say. But from another point of view, that the headquarters is closer to you makes everything easier. Okay?
Okay.
The Department of Archaeology Federal was the last department of the Pakistani government who left Karachi for Islamabad in 2008 only, or 7 or 8. So,
okay.
I mean, I would say 30 or 40 years after the establishment of the new capital city. Anyhow, KP, having the department, the directorate in KP based in Peshawar is change radically the things here in Swat. Totally. Okay?
Okay.
Much more money, much more investment, much more care, much more presence. Before it was difficult. Was objectively difficult to control from Karachi through the sub-regional office, Swat. Swat was a few officers. Now we have a Malakand SRO, including Swat SRO, includes Malakand, Bajaur, and so on. We have valiant, brilliant officers trained by Professor Dr. Samad. Samad is the best director you would dream to have, okay? Because he does intervene in a good way, always positive, always in encouraging you and helping you in all the matters, including the legal possession, the acquisition of land, which is the weak point of archaeology, always, anywhere in the world. You excavate, then you have the problem. And now, how to preserve it? Someone should invest to buy the land. And this is, for example, that was KP government has made. For example, The hugest acquisition of land in one single moment was done by Dr. Samad and KP government in 2019, by acquiring Barikot, Amluktar, Abasepshina, Gumbat, Udegram, Gogara, Galegei, and many other sites in one single moment. You know, the Italian government invested in Swat during the post-insurgency period with the famous ICT project, which was led by me, and thanks to which I got the award of Sitara Imtiaz in 2017. But the Italian government invested $2.5 million, okay?
Okay.
The KP government invested in post-project investment following the results of a city project, 3 millions.
Okay.
If not more, which means that we had the post-project effect of 130%. You know, this is when the project works, that you invest 100 and the beneficiary decide to invest 120%. That's incredible. That's incredible. I was dreaming to have all these lands preserved and protected for the future. And that dream was made, I must say, I don't want to be sentimental, but was made concrete and real by the intervention of Dr. Samad and his staff. Faisal Rahman in the Swat Museum, Mr. Nawazuddin in Makmamad in the headquarters, a combination of efforts led by a person who knows what archaeology is.
Yeah, it's very difficult in a country like Pakistan. And, you know, making our politician, you know, that this is a very important subject, important department, important work that we have to do. In a country which is struggling with its economy and the political structure, having a person like Abdus Samad, as you are mentioning, and he is leading the overall, you know, archaeological mission along with you and other of your colleagues.
Many other projects.
Yes, yeah. It's a very, very clever. Recently, we have witnessed the Kite project, which is a tourism-based project, and he has been, in that project, they have been preserved many areas. Even, you know, the shed has been installed right there in the Bazira city, and other, you know, the conservation work is being done across the Budkada and, you know, other parts of the Swat. So how do you see that, how much, well, this is a very short question, it's a kind of question, that how much it's important to preserve these sites?
How much?
How much is important?
It's important. I mean, it's important, that's it, period. It's important because without these things, everybody, every civilization, every culture, every country, everywhere in the world will precipitate in the barbarism. Because the knowledge of the past, the past is your father. Do you listen to your father? The past is your grandfather. Is still alive?
Right.
Do you listen what your grandfather says to you?
Obviously.
Or the advices?
Yes.
Why?
Because he lived here.
Because the past is the master, the teacher of the present. Okay, if you destroy the past, there will be no memories and nothing. Finish. You will be like a newborn baby, and as a newborn baby, you can have a temper. You decide to do this, to do that. The past teaches, pay attention. This can be done. This can be dangerous. Don't do this way. Don't touch the river. The river has a story. The river has its own temper. The river every 12 years can act like an evil, in a very, very strange way, and that can be dangerous.
Right.
So the past is this, and plus, you know, for the new generations, to be proud of their own land. This is a fact. To be proud of their own land. Now, in fact, this is one of the effects of the ACT project, Kite project, all the projects that came after the ACT, is that people is now much more aware of the importance of this land and are much more aware of their own heritage. Not in the sense Forget the religious aspect. This is a Hindu temple, this is a Buddhist shrine. That doesn't matter. The richness of the story, the stratigraphy of the story, the wealth of these magnificent ruins which are visible everywhere, like your jewels, the jewels of your crown. And the good thing is now the KP government was one of the first to understand that archaeology and ruins and heritage is not a burden. Before it was perceived as a burden. We have to spend money for this Gandhara. We had to spend money for this mass of piles of stones.
On the dead things.
Yeah. Now people is understanding at federal level also. Of course, throughout the country, but KP was a kind of pioneer in this regard. But also the federal government. Don't forget, because they were directors like Abdulazim was the last one, and the Fasaldat Kakar before, who were really, they understood this new trend. Heritage is not a burden. Heritage is an asset. Okay?
Right.
An asset can be transformed in money. Through which means tourism.
Religious
and
tourism.
Now, every Pakistani, I mean, there is a new trend, the new Pakistani middle class is growing everywhere. Everyone has a family with a car, they live in an apartment, completely different environment, right? They have a job, they go for vacation, and they go for vacation where? First they visit, they travel.
Okay.
Okay? So there is a huge demand of tourism, I mean, from the domestic tourism.
Right.
Plus, Swat, Buddhism, these keywords are so attractive for all the countries where Buddhism has been or still is part of the national identity. China, you have billions of people living there, so these are all potential tourists coming here bringing money. Okay, and that's.
But the foreign countries have developed their sites so much beautifully that they are earning millions of dollars out of it.
We are at the beginning of this.
And now the government has done a lot of work. I do see here the problem is that whatever the state do or the state is doing, it's really important that people take ownership of these places. And and they have to climb these places as their own. If they protected the local community around this place, they have the better understanding of this place and they take ownership of this, then it's the right way to preserve it, to not let the other outsider to come here, to have sometimes we have seen the people coming, running on these sites, exploiting it, putting stones on it. So it's a very small incident that's been happening.
Small and minor,
but still the people are really getting accepting day by day due to the role of the government. And as you mentioned,
there are also examples. For example, Barikot was preserved thanks to a person, which is not me. I'm just the executor of the digging, okay? The person who allowed us to execute this work, besides Dr. Samad, who put the legal framework around everything, was Arshad Khan. Arshad Khan is a Khan from a very relevant family of Barikot. They owned this one day, a large part of the lower city.
Right.
And they were the first to allow us to work here. Arshad Khan has let us working here for... we are leasing this one day since 1996. Okay. Who is Arshad Khan? Arshad Khan is the current Secretary Information.
I know him. And he was really kind of enough that he do understand the importance of this work.
But his example in the old system, the example of the Khan was transmitted. Down. And our workers at the beginning were happy to work with us because they were happy to do something for which Arshad Khan and his family were happy too. You understand? And then these initial conditions was extended. Now we have workers which are ready to do any moment, any excavation. They are super trained, super aware, absolutely. They even created their own archaeological guide association. because they understood the
The
potential.
the potential. Yeah, definitely. We have recently seen a very
So
increase in the tourist.
Example. You need example, good persons, examples, humans who rule the department in the right way, good set of rules, plus good archaeologists. I belong to the last part.
No, it's all about your work that has been you've been doing in the last 40 years. For us, it's sometimes we don't see your potential. It's I think the foreigners who come here and let us know that how much richness we have in our regions, and thanks to the Italian mission that they have been working from around 70 years, 70 years, and as you have spent your whole life here, so it's all because of the collaboration that the government and the people of Swat and the Italian people has been done. And as you see that the heritage doesn't belong to any nation, any specific people. It belongs to the whole world,
Of course.
and the whole world is responsible to preserve it. So it's a very good example for the world that we have this kind of collaboration, and it will be going on. And we recently have seen a very increase in the tourists coming to Swat in the last few years, that the peace has been almost restored, and this is a very huge potential of religious tourism in Swat. We have been seeing the sites of Buddhists in China and other countries, and they are earning millions of dollars out of it. If the government continues this work that have been doing, and the public take ownership, and the people come here, so it will be a very groom industry.
Of course.
And the work you have been done is a very less now.
Mhm.
You have a lot of work to do.
Mhm.
If a lot of revenue comes to the archaeological side, you do have a lot of teams, there are a lot of documentation working in excavations, and that can explore new horizons.
I would prefer not use the term religious tourism,
Okay.
because someone can be not happy with this.
Okay.
And they might have also their own rights. Okay,
Yes.
I would say cultural tourism.
Cultural
Okay.
tourism. Okay.
Culture includes many things. Philosophy, religions is part of the culture. Okay, it's part of the
Okay.
culture. And one thing is okay. The other thing, yes, the department should grow in order to accommodate the needs. Now the more excavations is done, the better it is.
Mhm.
For this, you need expert people, expert archaeologists, but you have a lot of young people, young students from universities. They expect only to be trained and work, right?
Yes.
Because there is a huge demand for.
Yes, definitely,
The rate of unemployment is pretty high, and
Yes.
archaeology can be a small, give a small, minor contribution to reduce the unemployment. Okay,
Obviously.
one thing. The other thing is that tourism is okay. We like tourism. I'm Italian. We live on tourists, but we know that tourists has to be
Yeah.
curbed. Okay, which means they should know where they are. They should respect the environment. They should respect the cultural environment, the existing cultural environment, as well as the real culture. I mean, the natural cultural environment. Tourists can be like grasshoppers,
Yes.
when they arrive onto
yeah, to a
field
crop,
of rice,
to
a crop, everything is
that's
gone.
vanished.
So, we want them not acting like
Mm.
grasshoppers, but acting like
responsible one.
responsible guests.
Responsible guest. Yeah, because the environment, the atmosphere, it all belongs to all the communities. If it's coming from the foreign country, it's coming from the far-flung area of our country, the heritage, the environment, it comes on our whole responsibility as a community responsibility. We have to take care about it, because every action has reactions and
Of course.
and a very greater impact. We see is that we put this shopper on the street, it doesn't count. It really counts.
Can I ask you publicly on this podcast? In Italy, we are producing plastic shoppers are banned. We were the first country in the European Union to ban the plastic shoppers.
Okay.
But plastic shoppers do still exist in Italy. So how? Because these plastic shoppers are made with the leftovers of the maize production. They are
Recyclable.
recycled, but are made of maize, are totally organic, but looks like plastic, are resistant like plastic.
Okay.
So Pakistan has a huge maize and wheat production. Whose byproducts can be utilized to produce these bioplastics,
Obviously.
which you can put these bioplastics in your land,
Right.
and after 3 months it's gone. It's like manuring, by the way.
Okay. I think but it's a very interesting thing that we have to do. And as we are growing and we have seen this,
If I were a Pakistani, I would say, if I were a Pakistani entrepreneur, I would invest in these bioplastic shoppers. But
Right.
the government should, at a certain moment, when this production is going on, is on the rise, they should ban the plastic, the other plastic.
Obviously, that should have been done a long time ago. And if after our civilization, I think archaeologists, when they dig after the 500 years,
There will be
might
the
find
plastic
plastics
generation.
and plastics
No,
and
no,
plastics.
no, that will be the plastic generation. Plastic civilization. In the future, we say Iron Age, Bronze Age, Stone Age, Bronze Age, Stone
Right,
Age.
right.
But there is a lot of Iron Age is very long. Then we have there will be the Steel Age at a certain
Yes.
moment, and now we are living in the Plastic Age.
Plastic.
Which
You have found a good treasures,
Yeah.
in the kind of art and architecture and a lot of learnings from the past civilizations. What our our coming civilization have to learn is just all about plastic.
No, but I hope that this will
things will
be
change.
just
Things
a
will change.
small parenthesis. Plastic,
Yeah.
is on less than 60 years. That is. When I was a boy in Italy, there was no plastic at all.
Okay.
No plastic at all. Just buckets and basins were made in very solid plastic, but no plastic bags, nothing. So
Okay.
in my experience, it's just, I would say, I'm 63, probably 40 years that plastic is omnipresent everywhere. So 40 years is nothing, it's just a parenthesis.
Okay.
We are still in time to stop it.
Yes, we
Okay.
need to stop it. Thank
And-
you.
Eh?
The light is gone,
Yeah.
and you are also leaving the country. Thank you so much, sir.
My
for
pleasure.
Your,
It was a very wonderful
it's-
conversation.
It's a really extreme honor to give me time to have a discussion right here,
Mhm.
to witness this beautiful river and have a conversation. And we are very much thankful on the behalf of whole Swat, on the behalf
Thank
of
you,
Pashtuns.
likewise.
We are really honored to have you in Swat.
Me too, to
And
be your guest.
We really proud to have you and the work that you have been done here in this
Whatever
country.
you say, likewise.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Again, thank you for having a beautiful conversation with me. And yes, when you come back after your visit, we will have another conversation.
Okay.
Right
Promise.
here. Right
Promise.
here. Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.